The voting screen displayed bright green across every terminal in the chamber. Counselor Petrie watched the numbers climb as species after species approved the motion. His feathers ruffled nervously as he tallied the final count. 247 votes in favor, 0 against. The Vraxil had done it. Ambassador Crelly stood at the center platform. His crystalline body reflecting the chamber, lights into rainbow patterns across the walls. Each of his 6 limbs moved with deliberate precision as he gestured to the holographic displays floating around him. Images of his homeworld Krageth rotated slowly, showing landscapes that made several council members visibly recoil. "Our world breaks the week," Crelly said, his voice resonating through translation devices. "Gravity crushes standard species. Our atmosphere burns lungs. Temperatures swing from frozen death to boiling agony within a single-day cycle." The hollows shifted to show Vraxil citizens moving through their cities. Their bodies gleamed like walking sculptures of diamond and obsidian. When one accidentally stepped into vacuum through an airlock malfunction, it simply walked back inside after several minutes, apparently unbothered. "We survive what others cannot imagine," Crellies continued. "Our children play in conditions that would kill your soldiers. We request what we have earned. Deathworlder status." Petrie glanced at his datapad. Only 3 species in galactic history had received this classification. The Korthax from their high-radiation world, the Brindle who evolved in crushing ocean depths, the Sharvik who lived on a planet with barely any atmosphere. All 3 species commanded respect, fear, and substantial political power. The economic advantages alone were staggering. Deathworlder species received priority on military contracts. They could claim mineral rights on worlds too dangerous for others. Safety regulations that applied to everyone else did not bind them. It was the galaxy's way of acknowledging that some species were simply tougher than the rest. "The evidence is clear," announced High Chancellor Vrim, a blob-like being who spoke through modulated chemical releases. "The Vraxil homeworld meets all criteria. Gravity exceeds standard by 0.8. Atmospheric composition would be lethal to 73% of registered species. Temperature variance exceeds acceptable ranges by factor of 4. Predator-class threats documented at level 9. Crellies bowed, a flowing movement that somehow made his rigid body seem graceful. "We are humbled by this recognition." Petrie doubted that. The Vraxil had been anything but humble since submitting their application 6 months ago. Still, the evidence did not lie. He had reviewed the geological surveys himself. Krageth was genuinely terrible. He pressed his wingtip to the approval icon on his screen. In the back observation section, Captain Dane Rivers sat quietly among other military observers. He had not moved much during the entire proceedings. His fingers drummed a slow rhythm against his knee, the only sign that he was paying attention at all. The human delegation consisted of just 3 people, tucked away where no one really noticed them. The formal announcement echoed through the chamber. "By unanimous decision, the Vraxil are hereby granted Deathworlder classification, with all rights and privileges therein." Cheers erupted from the Vraxil section. Their crystalline bodies chimed against each other like massive bells. Other species offered congratulations, though many looked nervous. Deathworlder species tended to throw their weight around. Dane watched Crellies accept praise from various ambassadors. The Vraxil had already been aggressive in trade negotiations. This new status would make them bolder. He could see it in how Crellies held himself, how the other Vraxil delegates had already started carrying themselves with more swagger. 3 months passed. Reports started flooding into the council. Vraxil military vessels had begun expanding into disputed territories. When challenged, they cited Deathworlder privileges. Their soldiers intimidated others in joint operations. Colonies on the frontier sent increasingly worried messages about Vraxil mining operations ignoring established boundaries. Petrie found himself buried in complaints. The Vraxil were not technically breaking laws, but they pushed every limit. When he tried to schedule mediation sessions, Krellies would arrive late, dismiss concerns, and remind everyone that Deathworlders operated under different rules. The situation came to a head when a Vraxil military unit forced an evacuation of a mixed-species mining station, claiming the environment was too dangerous for non-Deathworlders to operate there safely. Never mind that the station had functioned perfectly for 12 years. The Vraxil wanted the platinum deposits underneath. Ambassador Nora Walsh from Earth requested an emergency council session. Petrie almost denied it. Humans were classified as standard environment species. They had no standing in Deathworlder matters, but Walsh invoked an old regulation about challenging species classifications if new evidence emerged. The council reconvened, though with far less ceremony than the original vote. Krellies looked annoyed at being summoned. He took his position with obvious impatience. Nora approached the center platform. She was shorter than most species present, her bipedal frame unremarkable compared to the diverse body types around her. She carried a data core in both hands. "We contest the Vraxil classification," she said simply. The chamber went silent. No one had ever challenged a Deathworlder classification before. Krellies actually laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "On what grounds," he asked, "are humans jealous they lack our strength?" Nora did not rise to the bait. She inserted the data core into the platform interface. Earth appeared in holographic form above them. "We do not contest that Kragath is harsh," she said. "We contest that the Vraxil truly understand what Deathworlder means." Krellies gestured dismissively with three of his limbs. "Your world is paradise, temperate zones, abundant water, gentle gravity. We have seen the surveys." "The surveys of our vacation spots," Nora replied. "Let me show you the rest." The hollow shifted. Images of Earth's Arctic regions appeared, endless ice and howling winds. Then deserts where the ground cracked from heat. Jungles so dense that sunlight barely penetrated. Mountain ranges that scraped the sky. Oceans with storms that dwarfed most starships. "Humans live in all of these," Nora said. "Without modifications, without special equipment beyond basic clothing. We have settlements in your Arctic zones, your deserts, your jungles, and your mountains. We have survived ice ages, plagues, predators, and each other." Krellies waved this away. "Survival is not the same as thriving. You use tools because you are weak. We need nothing but ourselves." Nora smiled. It was not a friendly expression. "Then you will not mind a test." She outlined her proposal. 3 neutral worlds never before colonized. 1 ice world, 1 jungle world, 1 desert world. Human teams and Vraxil teams would attempt to establish sustainable colonies with minimal equipment. 6 months, monitored by council observers. "If your people succeed where we fail," Nora said, "we will never question Vraxil status again. But if we succeed where you struggle, then classifications will be reviewed," Petrie finished, his voice shaking slightly. Krellies looked around the chamber. Every species watched him. To refuse would seem cowardly. His pride would not allow it. "Agreed, this will be simple." Dane Rivers smiled from his seat in the back. He had been on ice worlds, jungle worlds, desert worlds. He knew what was coming. The Vraxil had no idea what they had just agreed to. Selection day arrived with unexpected tension. The 3 neutral worlds had been chosen by random computer generation to prevent bias. Frosthome, an ice planet with average temperatures of -60°C. Verdana, a jungle world with humidity levels that bred diseases faster than medical teams could catalog them. Ashmark, a desert planet where daytime temperatures could melt standard alloys. Lieutenant Oscar Reeve reviewed his team roster for the 100th time. 50 humans for each world. 150 total across all 3 locations. The selection committee had pulled from colony specialists, survival experts, and military personnel. He would lead the Frostthome team personally. Across the staging area, Vraxil warriors prepared with loud confidence. Their crystalline bodies chimed as they moved, organizing equipment with military precision. Threnix, their elite commander, stood head and shoulders above most other beings in the hangar. His body was darker than other Vraxil, almost black crystal, which apparently indicated superior strength among his people. "They look worried," Threnix called out, gesturing toward the human teams with two of his arms. Perhaps they realized their mistake. Reeve ignored him. He had learned long ago that responding to taunts wasted energy. Instead, he helped Dr. Helen Cross load botanical survey equipment into their shuttle. She was small, even for a human, but had spent 15 years studying extremophile organisms on various hellish worlds. "Think the Vraxil have ever been actually cold?" she asked quietly. "We will find out," Reeve replied. The council had established strict rules. Each team received identical starting supplies, basic shelter materials, water filtration equipment, standard rations for 2 weeks, medical supplies, and simple tools. No weapons beyond what they could manufacture. No communication with homeworlds. Council observation drones would monitor everything but not intervene except in case of total colony collapse. Success meant establishing sustainable food production, shelter, and maintaining at least 40 of the original 50 colonists for the full 6 months. Failure meant requesting emergency extraction, which would forfeit the challenge. Nora Walsh moved between the human teams, offering quiet words of encouragement. She stopped at Reeve's group and placed a hand on his shoulder. "No heroics, just survive." "That is the plan," he said. The shuttles launched in waves. Reeve watched through the viewport as they broke atmosphere, heading for their assigned worlds. The Vraxil vessels flew in tight military formation, precise and coordinated. The human ships spread out more casually, each crew running through their own pre-landing checks. Frostthome grew larger in the viewport. From orbit it looked beautiful, white and blue with swirling cloud patterns. Up close, Reeve knew it would be anything but beautiful. The shuttle bucked through atmospheric entry. Ice crystals formed on the exterior hull even before they touched down. The temperature gauge plummeted. -40, -50, -60, still dropping. "Landing zone ahead," the pilot called out. "Hope everyone brought their long underwear." They touched down on a relatively flat ice plain. Within seconds, frost covered every exterior surface. Reeve checked his suit seals one more time before hitting the door release. The cold attacked him like a physical force. Even through his thermal suit, he felt it searching for weaknesses. His breath formed clouds that froze into tiny ice particles before falling to the ground. He took 3 steps from the shuttle, and his boots crunched through the top layer of ice. Around him, his team emerged from the shuttle with various reactions to the cold. Some cursed, some laughed. All of them got to work immediately. They had practiced this in simulation hundreds of times. About 2 kilometers away, the Vraxil shuttle had landed. Through binoculars, Reeve watched them unload. They moved confidently, their crystalline bodies showing no obvious reaction to the temperature. Threnix stood directing his troops with broad gestures. "They seem fine," Cross observed, standing beside Reeve with her own binoculars. "Give it time," Reeve said. The first week proceeded according to plan for both teams. Humans erected insulated shelters using the provided materials, sealing every gap against the wind. They established a rotation for ice fishing through holes cut in the frozen lake nearby. Cross identified lichen growing on rock outcroppings that, while not tasty, proved edible after processing. The Vraxil built their structures with impressive speed. Their strength allowed them to carve directly into the ice, creating fortified bunkers. They seemed to need less food than humans, which gave them an early advantage. But Reeve noticed something during the second week. The Vraxil moved slower than they had initially. Their precise military coordination had become sluggish. When he zoomed his binoculars to maximum, he could see frost forming on their bodies, not melting away like it did on human skin. "Their joints are freezing," Cross said, watching the same thing. "That crystal structure is conducting heat away from their bodies faster than they can generate it." Week 3 brought the first Vraxil casualty. Council drones recorded it. A warrior had been standing watch outside their compound when his leg simply shattered. The crystal had become so brittle from the sustained cold that normal movement stress cracked it catastrophically. His companions carried him inside, but the damage was done. Human casualties remained at 0, though everyone suffered from minor frostbite at various points. The team developed a rhythm: wake before dawn, exercise to generate heat, rotate through outdoor tasks in shifts, share warmth in the communal shelter during the worst cold, fish through the ice. 10. The Lichen Gardens Cross had established inside greenhouse structures built over geothermal vents she had located. The geothermal vents were key. Reeve had not mentioned them to the Vraxil. He was not obligated to help his competitors, but he felt a twinge of guilt watching Threnix's team struggle. By week 5, the difference was stark. Human colony, 48 colonists, sustainable food production, warm shelters, established fishing protocols, and growing confidence. Vraxil colony, 38 warriors, dwindling rations, cold-damaged structures, and spreading frustration. Reeve could hear them sometimes when the wind was right. Not words, but the sound of crystalline bodies moving carefully, the chiming now discordant and pained. Another warrior had shattered the previous day. Then another. The cold was destroying them from the inside. Month 3 report went out to the council via the observation drones. The truth was undeniable. Humans were not just surviving Frostthome, they were thriving. The Vraxil were barely hanging on. On Verdana, early reports suggested a similar pattern developing. The jungle environment was causing unexpected problems for Vraxil armor. On Ashmark, the desert world, both teams struggled equally at first, but human advantages were beginning to show. Ambassador Krellies watched the reports from council chambers. His crystalline face could not show emotion, but his body language spoke volumes. He had stopped making proclamations about Vraxil superiority. The evidence was mounting against him. Nora Walsh sat across from him in the observation room. She said nothing. Sometimes silence was the loudest response possible. Outside, across 3 worlds, humans did what they had always done. They adapted, they persisted, they refused to quit. The Vraxil were learning that Deathworlder meant more than just surviving a harsh homeworld. It meant surviving anything. Rain hammered against the shelter canopy in rhythms that never seemed to repeat. Ben Torres had been counting drops for entertainment until he reached 10,000 and gave up. The jungle world of Verdana made Frostthome look peaceful by comparison. At least ice stayed still. Here, everything moved. Something with too many legs skittered across the roof above him. Ben did not bother looking up anymore. After 6 weeks on Verdana, he had learned to categorize jungle sounds into 3 groups: definitely harmless, probably harmless, and run immediately. The skittering fell into category 2. Outside the shelter, humidity hung so thick you could almost swim through it. The temperature never dropped below 30 Celsius, even at night. Moisture condensed on every surface. Equipment rusted despite protective coatings. Fungus grew on anything that stayed still for more than a few hours, including people if they were not careful. Ben loved it. This reminded him of home, of the Amazon basin where he had guided research teams through terrain that made tourists weep. His team had adapted quickly. Elevated platforms kept them above the flooding that came with seasonal rains. Waterproof tarps protected supplies. Constant movement prevented the jungle from swallowing them whole. The Vraxil had different experiences. Ben could see their compound from his observation post. They had bulldozed a clearing using their superior strength, cutting down vegetation in a perfect circle. very military, very organized, very stupid. The jungle did not appreciate being bulldozed. It fought back. Vines grew at visible speeds, reclaiming cut areas overnight. Insects swarmed the disturbed ground in numbers that blocked out light. And the mud, oh, the mud was special. Vraxel warriors weighed significantly more than humans due to their crystalline structure and extra limbs. On solid ground, this meant power. In Verdana's mud, it meant they sank. Ben had watched through binoculars as Vraxel soldiers struggled through their own compound, each step requiring tremendous effort to pull free from the sucking ground. Their armor, so effective on Krageth, became a liability here. Water seeped into the joints where crystal segments met. Minerals in the water formed deposits. The warriors moved with grinding sounds now, their once fluid motion reduced to jerky struggles. Several had developed what the human medical team diagnosed as fungal infections in those same joints, organisms that thrived in dark, wet spaces and slowly ate away at the crystal. "They asked for medical assistance yesterday," said Dr. Cross, joining Ben under the shelter. She had transferred from Frostholm after that colony stabilized, bringing her expertise to help Verdana's challenges. Council drones delivered antifungal medications. "Did it help?" Ben asked. "Some, but you cannot cure stupid." Cross pointed toward the Vraxel compound. "They are still trying to maintain their cleared perimeter, fighting the jungle instead of working with it." The human approach had been different from the start. Instead of clearing, they built up platforms in the trees, walkways connecting different areas. They let the jungle do what it wanted below while staying above the worst of it. When floods came, as they did every few weeks, humans stayed dry. The Vraxil waded through water that reached their midsections, their heavy bodies struggling against the current. Food proved easier for humans too. The jungle provided if you knew where to look. Ben had identified 17 edible plant species, 3 types of safe insects, and even located a population of small mammals that tasted reasonable after cooking. The Vraxil had brought more rations, expecting their lower metabolic needs would carry them through. But fungal contamination had destroyed half their supplies in the first month. Week 7 brought the predator. Ben heard it before he saw it, a sound like tearing metal mixed with organic screaming. The creature emerged from the jungle like a nightmare-given flesh. 4 meters tall, covered in armored plates, with jaws that could bite through tree trunks. The human team had nicknamed them tank lizards for obvious reasons. The tank lizard wandered into the Vraxil compound at dawn. Alarm chimes rang through the jungle as warriors mobilized. Ben grabbed his binoculars and watched the confrontation. Vraxil moved to surround the predator, their military training evident in the coordinated formation. They carried spears crafted from local materials, tips hardened in fire. Against most threats, this would work. The tank lizard was not most threats. It charged. 3 Vraxil went down in the first impact, crushed under mass and momentum. Others jabbed with spears, but the creature's armor deflected the strikes. One warrior managed a solid hit between plates. The tank lizard twisted, jaws clamping down on the warrior's upper body. Crystal shattered with sounds like breaking glass. More Vraxil joined the fight. They tried to use weight of numbers piling onto the predator's back, but their weapons were degraded from humidity. Spear shafts broke. The tank lizard threw them off and charged again. By the time it decided to leave, 5 Vraxil were dead and 7 more injured. The humans encountered the same tank lizard 3 days later. Ben spotted it approaching and signaled for Protocol Delta. The team moved with practiced efficiency, not to fight but to redirect. They used noisemakers, created false trails with scent markers, and established barriers that funneled the creature away from their camp without direct confrontation. The tank lizard followed the false trail, found nothing interesting, and wandered back into deeper jungle. 0 human casualties. The Vraxil watched this from their compound, and Ben swore he could see the frustration even in their crystalline bodies. Commander Threnix, who had rotated to Verdana to assess the situation, stood at the edge of his compound that evening. Ben approached carefully, hands visible and empty. The Vraxel did not stop him. "Your people do not fight," Threnix observed. His voice carried pain. Up close, Ben could see the fungal growth in his joints, white and spreading. "We fight when we must," Ben replied. "But surviving is not about fighting everything. Sometimes it is about knowing what fights to avoid. On Kragath we fight, we prove strength. And Kragath has one environment, one ecosystem, one set of rules." Ben gestured to the jungle around them. "This place has 1,000 different threats. You cannot fight them all. You have to learn to live alongside them." Threnix said nothing for a long moment. Rain pattered against his crystalline shoulders, pooling in the cracks that were spreading through his structure. "We are losing." "You are learning," Ben corrected. "That is different." But the reports did not lie. By month 4, the Verdana Vraxel colony had dropped to 31 functional warriors. 8 more were incapacitated by injuries or infections. Their compound was slowly being reclaimed by the jungle despite their efforts. Food supplies were critically low. The human colony maintained 47 people, with only 3 having requested medical evacuation for various treatable conditions. They had established farming plots using cleared sections under their platforms. Protein came from insect cultivation and hunting. Water was abundant and filtered. Cross ran the numbers one evening while rain drummed overhead. "At this rate, the Vraxel will request extraction before month 6. They physically cannot sustain this." Ben nodded. He felt no satisfaction in being right. Just a quiet understanding that strength came in many forms, and the Vraxel had bet everything on the wrong kind. The sun rose over Ashmark like an angry god. Within minutes, the temperature climbed from tolerable to hostile. Rebecca Kim watched the thermometer outside her shelter tick upward. 40 Celsius, 50, 60, still climbing. By midday, it would hit 70, hot enough to cook food on exposed rocks. She retreated deeper into the underground shelter her team had excavated during their first week. The Vraxel had mocked them for digging. "Hiding in holes like prey animals," their commander had said. The Vraxel built above ground, proud structures that stood against the desert like monuments to their strength. Now in month 4, those monuments were ovens. Rebecca could see them through the periscope her team had installed. Heat waves distorted the view, making the Vraxel compound shimmer like a mirage. But she could still make out the warriors moving slowly between buildings, their crystalline bodies acting like greenhouses, trapping and magnifying the solar radiation. The underground approach had been Reeves' idea before he rotated back to coordinate all 3 sites. Humans had survived deserts on Earth for thousands of years using similar tactics. Stay underground during peak heat. Move at dawn and dusk. Conserve water with obsessive discipline. The Vraxel had different evolutionary advantages. They needed less water initially. Their crystalline structure could tolerate higher temperatures than human flesh. For the first month, they had seemed invincible. They worked through the midday heat while humans huddled in their holes. They consumed a fraction of the water humans required. They seemed poised to dominate this environment. Then the cracks started. Literal cracks. Vraxel bodies were rigid crystal structures that did not expand and contract well. The extreme temperature swings of Ashmark, from daytime highs of 70 Celsius to nighttime lows of -20, created stress fractures. Warriors began developing spiderweb patterns across their bodies. Some fractures went deep enough to compromise structural integrity. Rebecca had medical training and had offered to help. The Vraxel refused at first, pride overriding sense. By month 2, they started accepting assistance quietly, individual warriors visiting the human camp after dark when their commanders were not watching. Water became the decisive factor. The Vraxel had chosen a location based on proximity to what orbital scans suggested was an underground reservoir. They dug down 50 meters before admitting the scans were wrong. By then, they had committed resources and could not relocate easily. The human team had approached water differently. They did not dig for it. They hunted for it. Rebecca and her teammates spent 3 full days tracking patterns in the sand, watching where morning dew formed most heavily, observing insect behavior, checking vegetation distribution. Old Earth techniques that felt primitive but worked. They found water 30 meters down in a location that made no logical sense according to the geological data. But it was there, and it was abundant. The human colony now had sustainable water supplies. The Vraxil were rationing down to dangerous levels. "We have to share with them," Rebecca had argued during a team meeting in week 10. "They will die otherwise." Not everyone agreed. "This is a competition," someone pointed out. "Helping them costs us." "Letting them die costs us more," Rebecca countered. "What does it say about us if we watch people die when we could prevent it?" The vote was not unanimous, but the majority agreed. Rebecca approached the Vraxil compound the next morning carrying water containers. The guard almost turned her away until she explained her purpose. 5 minutes later, she stood before Commander Vraxil, whose name translated roughly to Granite. "We do not need charity," Granite said. His voice carried the grinding sound that all Vraxil had developed here, crystal joints filled with sand particles that worked like sandpaper. "This is not charity," Rebecca replied. "This is one survivor sharing information with another. We found water using tracking methods. I can teach your people how we did it. What you do with that information is your choice." Granite's crystalline face could not show expression, but his body language shifted. "Why?" "Because tomorrow we might need something you know. Because cooperation is survival strategy. Because I am tired of watching people suffer when I can help." She spent 4 hours teaching Vraxil scouts the tracking techniques, how to read sand patterns, how to identify indicator plants, how to use temperature differential mapping. They were intelligent and learned quickly. Within a week, they had located their own water source, not as abundant as the human site but sufficient. The gesture did not solve all the Vraxil problems. The temperature stress continued damaging their bodies. Sand infiltrated everything, grinding away at crystal joints with each movement. Several warriors had developed what the team called sand seizure, where their bodies locked up from accumulated particles in critical joint areas. But it changed something between the two camps. Vraxil, who had mocked humans for weakness, started asking questions. How did humans survive the heat? How did they move efficiently in sand? How did they prevent sunburn without natural armor? The answers were humbling for the Vraxil. Humans survived through biological mechanisms they had dismissed as weaknesses. Sweat evaporation provided incredibly efficient cooling. Bipedal motion with flexible joints allowed movement across sand that Vraxil's 6-limbed weight distribution could not match. Human skin's ability to tan provided radiation protection that adapted to conditions. "You are made of soft materials," Granite observed during one evening exchange. "Yet you endure what breaks crystal." "Soft materials bend," Rebecca said. "Hard materials shatter. There is strength in flexibility." By month 5, the Ashmark situation had stabilized into an unexpected balance. The human colony maintained 49 of their original 50. One colonist had been evacuated after heat stroke in week 2, but everyone else had adapted. They had sustainable water, underground shelters with good thermal management, and had even established small farming plots using shade cloth and irrigation. The Vraxil colony was down to 29 functional warriors. 12 more were too damaged to work effectively, but they were learning, adopting some human techniques, building underground during peak heat, using lighter materials for construction, moving during dawn and dusk rather than powering through midday. The council drones recorded everything. The data was undeniable across all 3 worlds now. Frostholm had been the first clear demonstration. Verdana had reinforced the pattern. Ashmark completed the picture. Humans were not stronger than Vraxil, not tougher in any direct measurement, not more physically durable, but they were more adaptable. They learned faster. They modified behavior to match conditions. They helped each other, and now they were helping the Vraxil. That was the detail that bothered Ambassador Krelly's most when he reviewed the reports. The humans had won. That was clear. But they had won while also keeping their competitors alive. What kind of Deathworlder did that? What kind of species prioritized cooperation over competition even when competing? Nora Walsh could have told him. Humans had survived Earth not by being the strongest predator, but by being the most adaptable social animal. They hunted in packs. They shared knowledge. They helped even those outside their immediate group because today's competitor might be tomorrow's ally. The Vraxil had built their civilization on individual strength. Humans had built theirs on collective adaptation. Both approaches had merits, but only one worked everywhere. Month 6 reports were due in 3 weeks. The final assessment would be clear. The only question remaining was what the Council would do with the information. The Council chamber filled slowly. Representatives from 200 species found their designated spaces while display screens cycled through preliminary data. Councillor Petrie had not slept well in weeks. The assessment results were in, and they were going to cause problems. High Chancellor Vrim oozed onto the central platform, chemical signals translating to words through the atmospheric processors. We convene to review the 6-month survival assessment. All data has been compiled. Observers have submitted final reports. We will now hear presentations from both species. Ambassador Krellies took his position with noticeably less confidence than 6 months ago. His crystalline body showed stress fractures even here, visible under the chamber lights. He had visited Ashmark personally in month 5 and returned changed. The Vraxil have demonstrated strength, he began. Our teams survived conditions that would destroy lesser species. We maintained presence on all 3 worlds for the full assessment period. Technically true, the Vraxil had not completely evacuated any location, but the costs were visible in the data now scrolling across screens. Frostthome, 38 survivors from 50, multiple catastrophic structural failures, food production unsustainable. Verdana, 31 survivors, 8 critically injured, compound partially reclaimed by jungle. Ashmark, 29 functional warriors, 12 disabled by environmental damage. Nora Walsh approached next. She carried no data cores or holographic displays. The numbers spoke for themselves. Humanity presents the following assessment results. Frostthome Colony, 48 survivors, sustainable operations established, excess food production achieved. Verdana Colony, 47 survivors, integrated agricultural systems operational, threat mitigation protocols effective. Ashmark Colony, 49 survivors, water security established, thermal management optimized. The chamber went quiet. Several species checked their translation devices, certain they had misheard. The humans had not just survived, they had thrived, across all 3 environments that were supposed to prove Vraxil superiority. A representative from the Quillanth species raised a wing. How is this possible? Your people have no natural armor, no crystalline structure. You are classified as standard environment species. That classification was based on incomplete data, Nora replied. Council surveyors observed Earth's temperate zones and extrapolated. They missed the larger picture. She activated the display behind her. Earth appeared in full detail. Humans did not evolve in paradise. We evolved in chaos. Our planet has every extreme environment simultaneously. Ice caps at both poles, deserts covering entire continents, jungles that make Verdana look managed, mountain ranges taller than many species have ever climbed, oceans deeper than some worlds are wide. The display shifted to show human history, archaeological sites in frozen tundra, ancient settlements in scorching deserts, coastal communities that survived hurricanes that would level cities. We did not just visit these environments, we colonized them. Before we achieved spaceflight, humans had permanent settlements in every biome Earth offers. We survived ice ages that covered continents, droughts that lasted generations, plagues that killed millions but never destroyed us completely. Ambassador Krellies interrupted. You survived with tools, with technology. Your natural bodies are weak. Our natural bodies adapt, Nora countered. Our skin changes color for radiation protection. Our metabolism adjusts to available food. Our circulatory system regulates temperature across a range no other known species matches. And yes, we make tools. Our intelligence is our natural advantage. Dismissing it is like dismissing Vraxil's strength because it comes from crystalline structure rather than muscle. She pulled up comparison data. The Vraxil evolved on Krageth. One planet, one environment, harsh, yes, deadly, absolutely, but consistent. Your body's optimized for specific conditions. When those conditions changed on our test worlds, optimization became limitation. The display showed thermal imaging from Ashmark. Vraxil bodies glowing bright in the infrared spectrum, heat building internally with no way to dissipate it. Then human bodies, covered in evaporative cooling from sweat, maintaining stable core temperatures. Humans evolved as generalists. We are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most durable. We are adequate at everything and optimized for nothing. That makes us universal survivors. Petrie spoke up, his voice shaking slightly. What are you requesting? Reclassification of humans as Deathworlders. We are requesting accurate classification of both species, Nora said. The Vraxil are Deathworlders. They survived conditions on Krageth that would kill most species instantly. But they are specialized Deathworlders. Humanity proposes a new category, adaptive Deathworlders, species that can survive anywhere through flexibility rather than toughness. Krellies looked like he wanted to object but could not find grounds. The evidence was overwhelming. His people had lost the assessment by every measurable metric. Worse, they had lost it while humans actively helped them survive. That detail appeared in every observer report. Humans sharing water tracking knowledge on Ashmark. Humans offering medical assistance on Verdana. Humans who could have let Vraxil fail but chose cooperation instead. A representative from the Sharvik, one of the original 3 Deathworlder species, spoke. This has implications beyond classification. If humans are truly adaptive survivors, their military potential exceeds anything we have seen. The Vraxil gained contracts based on assumed superiority. Those contracts may need revision. We are not seeking military dominance, Nora said. We are seeking accurate understanding. The Vraxil are formidable in their element. Humans are competent in all elements. Both facts can be true. Threnix, who had been standing in the Vraxil section, stepped forward. His crystalline body showed damage from months on test worlds. I must speak. Krellies tried to stop him, but Threnix ignored his ambassador. I fought alongside my warriors on all 3 worlds. I watched my people fail where humans succeeded, not because humans are stronger, because they are smarter about survival. They do not fight the environment, they learn from it, adapt to it, become part of it. He turned to face Krellies directly. We claimed Deathworlder status based on surviving Krageth. The humans proved we only know how to survive one kind of death. They know how to survive all of them. Our pride made us blind. I will not let it make us stupid as well. The chamber erupted in overlapping conversations. Species arguing about what this meant, whether classifications should be changed, what it meant for galactic power structures if humans were genuinely the most versatile survivors. High Chancellor Vrim released calming pheromones into the atmosphere. We will vote. First vote. Should the Vraxil retain Deathworlder status? The result was unanimous approval. The Vraxil had earned their classification legitimately. Krageth was genuinely terrible, and surviving it was genuinely impressive. Second vote. Should humans receive Deathworlder classification with special notation for adaptive capability? This vote took longer. Species concerned about human expansion, others excited about partnership opportunities, some worried about economic implications, but the evidence was undeniable. The vote passed with 87% approval. Nora felt relief wash over her, not triumph, just relief that the truth was finally acknowledged. Humans were not standard environment species. They were survivors, everywhere, always. The real work would begin now, renegotiating contracts, establishing new protocols, teaching the galaxy that strength came in many forms. But that could wait. Right now, she had one more thing to do. She approached Krelly's and extended her hand. The gesture confused him for a moment before he understood and gripped it with two of his crystalline fingers. "Your people are impressive," she said. "Let us find ways to work together rather than compete." Krelly's held the grip for a moment. "We underestimated you. This will not happen again." "Good," Nora replied. "We could use allies who understand survival." 8 months after the reclassification vote, Lieutenant Oscar Reeves stood on a cliff overlooking the construction site. Below him, human and Vraxil workers moved in coordinated patterns, building the first joint species survival training facility. The location was fitting. A moon orbiting a gas giant, with surface conditions that combined the worst of all three test worlds. Cold at the poles, humid jungles at the equator, deserts in the mid-latitudes. Threnix climbed up to join him, moving carefully on legs that still showed fracture patterns from frost foam. The Vraxil had healed mostly, but the scars remained as reminders. "Your people work fast. So do yours when you stop trying to do everything alone," Reeve observed. The training facility had been Nora Walsh's idea. If the galaxy was going to recognize different types of Deathworlder capabilities, it needed to train people in both approaches. Vraxil strength and durability, human adaptability and problem-solving. Together, they could teach others how to survive conditions that would normally be fatal. The first class of trainees had arrived last week. 30 species sent representatives, eager to learn from both humans and Vraxil. The economic implications alone were staggering. Worlds previously considered too dangerous for colonization were now opening up. Mining operations in extreme environments could proceed with properly trained personnel. Rescue operations had new protocols. Dr. Helen Cross emerged from the jungle section carrying samples. She had transferred permanently to the training facility to develop curriculum. "We have 17 new edible plant species cataloged. Going to need bigger greenhouses." "Everything needs to be bigger," Reeves said. "We are already over capacity and more applicants arrive daily." The council had not anticipated the demand. Survival training had always existed, but it focused on species-specific techniques. The Human-Vraxil partnership offered something different: universal survival principles, how to assess any environment and find ways to thrive in it. Threnix had proven surprisingly good at teaching. His military background gave structure to the courses. His experience failing on the test worlds gave him humility, and his willingness to acknowledge human superiority in certain areas made students trust his judgment. "I never thought I would be teaching others how to survive," Threnix said. "On Krageth, you survive or you die. No instruction needed." "Earth had teachers," Reeve replied. "Elders who passed knowledge to children. We formalized survival because we knew individuals could not learn everything alone. Your people will adapt to this too." Down at the construction site, a Vraxil worker was demonstrating proper load-bearing techniques to a human engineer. The human took notes, asking questions about structural integrity in high-gravity situations. Nearby, a human instructor showed a group of Vraxil how to build effective insulation using minimal materials. The exchange went both ways. Ambassador Krelly's had resigned after the reclassification. His pride could not survive the public acknowledgement of Vraxil limitations. The new ambassador, a younger Vraxil named Crystales, approached survival with different attitudes. She had been part of the Verdana team and learned hard lessons about adaptation. Crystales joined them on the cliff, her crystalline body reflecting the setting sun into rainbow patterns. The council approved funding for 5 more facilities. They want one in each major galactic region. We barely have staff for this one, Cross pointed out. Then we train more staff, human and Vraxil working together teaching others. Crystales gestured to the construction below. 6 months ago, my people would have built this alone and claimed superiority. Now we build together and create something better. The fundamental shift in Vraxil culture had been unexpected. The test world failures had not destroyed them. Instead, it forced collective reassessment. They were still warriors, still proud of their strength, but now they understood strength had limits. Adaptation had value. Cooperation made everyone more capable. Human culture had shifted too, though more subtly. For years, humanity had accepted its classification as standard environment species. The reclassification validated what many had suspected. Earth was not paradise. It was a proving ground, and humans were not weak survivors. They were versatile survivors. The recognition brought responsibilities. More species sought human advice on colonization. Requests for human personnel on dangerous missions increased dramatically. Some worried humanity would become the galaxy's go-to problem solvers, always called when things got difficult. Nora had addressed this in a recent council speech. We are willing to help, but we are not saviors. We are partners. The goal is not to make everyone dependent on human adaptability. The goal is to teach adaptability so everyone can solve their own problems. Reeve thought about that as he watched construction proceed. The facility would teach survival skills, yes, but more importantly, it would teach the mindset. How to approach problems without predetermined solutions. How to assess conditions and adapt plans. How to work with others who had different strengths. A shuttle descended from orbit, carrying the next group of trainees. Reeve recognized species from across the galactic spectrum, some from high-gravity worlds, others from low-oxygen environments, a few from places with such specific conditions they had never considered leaving their homeworlds. 20 new students, Crystales noted, all eager to learn how humans survive everywhere and how Vraxil survive anything. We should probably mention we do not actually survive everything, Cross said. Humans die in extreme environments all the time. We just die slower than most species. And we learn from the deaths, Reeve added. Every failure teaches the next group how to succeed. That is the real human advantage. We remember mistakes and do not repeat them. Threnix made a sound like chiming glass, the Vraxil equivalent of laughter. On Kragath, we repeat mistakes and call it tradition. Perhaps we should learn more than just survival techniques from you. The sun continued setting, painting the sky in colors that existed because this moon had an atmosphere humans could actually breathe with minor assistance. The facility had been built in a location accessible to most species, neutral ground where everyone could learn together. Below, work continued into the evening. Vraxil strength moving heavy equipment, human ingenuity solving logistical problems, other species contributing their own specialties. The galaxy was learning what Earth had demonstrated. Cooperation created capabilities no single species could achieve alone. Reeve felt satisfied watching the progress. 6 months ago, humans and Vraxil had been competitors, each trying to prove superiority. Now they were partners, teaching the galaxy new ways to approach survival. The Vraxil had claimed Deathworlder status based on strength. Humans had proved them wrong not by being stronger, but by showing strength came in many forms, and the galaxy was better for learning that lesson. We should head down, Crystales said. Dinner rotation starts soon. I believe tonight is human cuisine. Oh no, Threnix said. Last time you served us something called curry that made my crystalline structure vibrate for hours." Cross grinned. "That is how you know it is good." They descended together, human and Vraxil, heading toward a future neither species had imagined 6 months ago. A future where Deathworlder meant more than just surviving harsh homeworlds. It meant thriving anywhere with anyone, by combining strengths instead of competing over them. And somewhere on Earth, in temperate zones and frozen tundras and scorching deserts and humid jungles, humans continued doing what they had always done. Surviving, adapting, persisting, refusing to quit. Because that was what Deathworlders did.